What's happening, wrestling fans?
That's a wonderful welcome to the show. That facial expression is the first thing people are going to see.
It's just my face, dude. Just my face.
Can't do a thing about it.
Nope.
Dynamite Doug is just Doug again tonight on the Two
Oh,
Bros Wrestling Show.
I forgot to fix it again, man. We do the other live stream for our band, and I'm just Doug over there, and I forgot to tweak it to back the Dynamite Doug. It's like I'm laying low. Papa Khan is going to be so upset with me.
I thought maybe he was upset with you after last week's show, Doug, where our topic was layoffs at AEW. So I thought maybe he just demoted you to Doug.
No, he may be upset with me after my botch of the week this week, but that's at the end of the show. What are you doing now? Come on, get in here.
I think Mommy's.
Oh, we have a special guest.
Maybe.
So, Doug, we actually have a sort of a companion show, really, to last week's show. This week's main event topic. We are going.
It really is. All right, now you have a special guest running through in the background. What are you doing? Turn all the lights off.
I need a hard surface.
Here, grab that giant paper stuff there.
Okay.
The back will make you a really good drawing desk.
Okay.
All right. Love you. Good night.
Good night.
Folks, thank you for tuning in to the 2.5 Bros Wrestling Show. We are getting to the wrestling. Doug, happy Easter. Happy Easter to everyone watching.
Happy Easter.
In many ways, tonight's main event topic, we kind of have an Easter theme.
Do we? Well, there are tons of things in Papa Khan's Easter basket right now. Let me tell you, some of them very large, but
I was thinking more of the fact that you have kind of you have an underground promotion that sort of grows through devoted followers, word of mouth. It's killed prematurely, and then it rises again. So we're talking Ring of Honor.
I had not made that, but it's appropriate.
Or completely inappropriate, either way. But we do appreciate everyone who tunes in on Easter. We hope everyone's had a great Easter. We are talking Ring of Honor, and Doug, it really is a companion piece to last week's show. When we talked AEW and maybe trimming the fat, there was a lot we left on the table because we knew now he's got a whole other sandbox he can move pieces to.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk not only what those pieces could be, but additions, things we'd like to see, because I think this Ring of Honor thing is happening way quicker than a lot of people may have expected.
Yeah, we're getting Ring of Honor all over the place. Are you coming back in here to talk Ring of Honor? Because if not, you should be hanging out with Mommy.
I just gave all your health on.
What's happening?
That's a sign to get to the opening bell.
All right, let's do this before we have a third man in the booth.
Let's talk a little bit of news. We're going to go over, in fact, to the other side of the wrestling world, and specifically New Japan Pro Wrestling. But it's a good sign for the health of the Japanese wrestling market in that New Japan has applied for visas for their international talent for the first time since the start of the pandemic in 2020. As hard as the pandemic has hit wrestling at large, it's been particularly difficult in Japan. Even though they were the first to start live wrestling shows again, they've remained under more restrictions periodically and been subjected to sporadic shutdowns and things that the wrestling market in America really has not. They can't clap. They can only clap. They can't cheer. It's just a lot of restrictions. So just the fact that they are opening themselves up again to bringing in international talent is a good sign for the future health of the New Japan wrestling in particular, but the Japanese wrestling market in general.
That is good, and could play into Papa Khan's major announcement he has coming up this week on Dynamite too.
Very well could. Doug, this next one is a news item, I think, for you, but MLW World Champion Alex Hammerstone is looking to jam. So
awesome.
Uber talented Hammerstone, who is a tremendous world champion, great in the ring. It's amazing he's not been snatched up by Vince or Tony yet, but he's released a new album under the band name Blown Away Luna. The album's available on Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, all the places. But the MLW star, he provides vocals on the album, also plays both guitar and drums. And in a tweet to promote it, he noted he would be interested in playing out live if he could find musicians who wanted to work with him. So
let's do it. I'm looking up his contact information right now.
you put the feelers out, Doug, and we'll get our two creative worlds to merge here: the wrestling and the music. How about that?
Do it. Let's do
jam
it.
Hammerstone. Oh, and I guess this is also sort of something that I think relates to you, Doug, or at least to Dynamite, Doug. But last week when we were doing our show, we reported to the folks watching at home that Raquel Gonzalez had been renamed Raquel Rodriguez. I think I joked at the time that it's just a wonder they didn't go with Raquel, considering how bad that Vince really hated.
Oh my God, I did not watch SmackDown this week. Is she just Raquel now?
Oh, no. But come Monday, if you saw Raw,
yeah, Theory.
Because we wrestling fans, as dumb as we are, will not be able to keep Stone Cold Steve Austin and Austin Theory separate in our minds. So we've already had an Austin whose heyday was 25 years ago and who's a retired legend now, but we could still get him confused with Austin Theory, so he is just now Theory.
So, I did catch sort of related to this. I think it was on What Culture Wrestling or maybe Wrestle Talk, one of their shows this weekend, where they're talking about all these ridiculous name changes that go on. Apparently, from what this outlet was saying, and again, I honestly don't remember, so apologies to both the talents of both of those organizations, but apparently it is a trickle down from Vince McMahon himself, who wants nothing to do with any branding that these people did for themselves or brought to the table, and wants to completely rebrand them. That's why we got a Butch, a Raquel Rodriguez, probably honestly an Austin Theory who is now just Theory. I'm waiting for Tommaso Ciampa to be, Tom, or something. So,
well, in related news to that, Raul Mendez, who has gone by that name in NXT since 2016, is now without explanation or even saying, "Hey, you used to know him as," which at least they did something along those lines with Butch, but he's now Cruz del Toro. And they just
awesome name, man. I mean, Cruz del Toro is an awesome name.
I'm sorry, Doug. I just found out that Vince McMahon supposedly has changed your name from Dynamite Doug to NXT Nick. So we need to make that change on the graphics. I don't know, dude. It is the strangest thing. I get that you want to own and monetize and market. And that's why they change your name when they come off the indies, but why they have you and then change your name, or why they have you and then shorten your name because they think that wrestling fans are not bright enough to know there's a difference between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Austin Theory. That part is a little bizarre to me.
I wondered, Vince realizes that he owns NXT, right? It's not an indie promotion out there somewhere. He doesn't have to change their names.
Exactly. I understand that if Walter had come over from Europe and he was wrestling for ICW or something over there, and over here you change his name to Gunther, it's one thing. But he has been Walter for a long time on your programming, in your WWE universe. That's where it makes a whole lot less sense that Vince gets so obsessed with these name changes unnecessarily.
Unnecessarily, because Pete Dunne, Walter. I mean, again, these are names that I guess they came up through the indies with. That Triple H let them keep them. I'm surprised that there was a force for Steen to become Kevin Owens. And the same thing with Sammy becoming Sami Zayn instead of El Generico. Maybe they just wanted to change things up with the promotion. Joe got to keep his name.
Joe got, yeah.
And now he wrestles. Same thing with Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, I kind of see a point in him doing it. But
strange times. In other news, veteran pro wrestling talent, promoter, producer, Pat Buck has begun working with AEW just days after leaving WWE. Buck departed Vince McMahon land days after WrestleMania 38, telling the company that he had accomplished everything he'd set out to do when he joined them 3 years ago. And then word comes this week that Pat was backstage at Dynamite producing.
So Buck said that he had accomplished everything he set out to do. Wanted to spend more time with his family and like his own, like not his promotion, but I guess he has to school or something like that.
Yeah.
Apparently, about 10-15 days, whatever he was out, was more than long enough with the family. Yeah, I got to get back on the road. Sorry.
Well, as you have demonstrated, I mean, family can be a loss.
I've got to make sure by the time we hit the main event, make sure my 6-year-old is ready to talk Ring of Honor.
Oh my, Doug, United Kingdom is seeing the very first WWE Stadium event in what was it, 30 years? They announced this week. I'm sorry, Premium Live event is occurring, and I'm guessing it would have been like SummerSlam back Bulldog and Bret Hart SummerSlam was.
Wow.
I mean, 92, 93, something like that. But Wells is going to host it, and they didn't immediately disclose a name for the event or other details other than it is happening Saturday night, September 3rd. It will follow the traditional SummerSlam event, which is usually in August, but this year is happening earlier than normal in July. And for those in our immediate area, SummerSlam this year is in Nashville, and tickets are on sale this Friday. So SummerSlam in July, and then pay-per-view to be named, but taking place from the United Kingdom internationally for the first time, a stadium show, 30 years in the making for the fans over across the pond.
That is crazy. I mean, I did not realize that. Wow. I can see how the pandemic can put some time on that. Of course, the pandemic seems like it's been going on for 30 years. So
I guess outside of the Saudi Arabia events, they haven't done an international pay-per-view as such. And obviously, England is one of the WWE's bigger markets. One of the reasons why it has the only brand of the WWE universe outside of North America. So could be interesting. Could be a fun show. And finally, Doug, you sort of teed us up earlier about Tony Khan's big announcement scheduled for this week for Dynamite. And typically, I don't report on these sorts of things in the news segment because, I mean, it's wrestling and it's full of hyperbole, and normally everything's the biggest, greatest, most violent. But Tony's not one to really promote a big announcement this far in advance without delivering on it. And the last time that he had such an announcement, it was concerning our main event topic tonight, and that was the purchase of Ring of Honor. So rumors are that a couple of things that could be on the Tony Khan agenda for Wednesday is a major TV deal for Ring of Honor, or even perhaps a streaming platform and streaming deal for AEW is another thing I'm hearing. Is there anything outside of those two that you're hearing?
Yeah, swinging back around to all the New Japan folks there with their visas teeing up. There is a rumor floating around that we could possibly be getting an AEW New Japan Super Show in the U.S., which would be amazing.
Yes, it would.
And now you've led with this with the information about the visas. Yeah, exactly. That makes that one sound a lot more credible all of a sudden.
I mean, honestly, any of those three things would be excellent news for wrestling fans. I mean, AEW really needs and deserves its own dedicated streaming platform, the way that the WWE has its own hub. Ring of Honor actually getting a deal would be obviously a major step forward in the relaunch of that company, and then a Super Show announcement with New Japan. Wow, that would be something else as well. So let's tune in on Wednesday and see what Doug Sugar Daddy has to give us.
Papa Khan's not going to let us down. But yeah, a Super Show sounds like such an amazing event for later this summer. And again, there's just so much more evidence stacking on the table now with knowing that, a lot of the New Japan talent is getting their visas all primed and ready to roll. And that's just something I would hope that Kenny Omega is healthy enough for, or they're building around. Not, they don't need to build around Kenny, but really, what is something AEW and New Japan going to be without Kenny, if that's what it is,
If that's what it, but
if
it's
that's what it is.
It could still be on the table because
he could still show up and make an appearance. I still haven't got me. Yeah, but had a slight mishap, an ink explosion right before we went on air. But
it's not easy being Dynamite Doug, folks. He just makes it look hard.
If this was easy, anybody could do it, man.
And Doug, with that, what do you say? Let's transition from the opening bell and let's get to our main event.
Let's do this. Let's do this. This is exciting territory because Ring of Honor has produced so many of not just mine but your favorite wrestlers throughout the years. People who have really gone on to become household names in WWE and then fall back to AEW. Make their way over to New Japan.
Just say, talk New Japan. I mean, a lot of the American stars that were big over there graduated from Ring of Honor.
A Ring of Honor. I, honestly, in the last couple of years, I had fallen out of touch with the Ring of Honor product. But there are also Ring of Honor mainstays that have been around forever, like the Briscoes, who lost to FTR, lost their tag team titles, their ROH tag team titles to FTR. So I've got to think at some point in the future we're going to see something like that. But just so many toys in Papa Khan's sandbox at this point to play with here, man.
Well, I mean, I have kept up with Ring of Honor, and we'll say the last year and a half. And truthfully, it was in some ways Tony Khan's AEW that sort of spelled the beginning of the end for Ring of Honor as it was previously known, because that cool, hip promotion. I mean, really, in some ways, maybe you could even say NXT started to take a little bit of that when they started hiring indie talent and WWE started gobbling up talent. And then when the Bucks and Cody left Ring of Honor and decided that they were going to, get into bed with Tony Khan and then try this idea of launching a new promotion. The space for what Ring of Honor became smaller and smaller, and Sinclair was not putting the money into it. And
I think elite adjacent too. We've got to mention, Marty Scurll.
Sure.
Because I mean, Marty, he had every opportunity to go to AEW. I'm sure, just with the rest of the elite, chose to stick with Ring of Honor and get a very, very lucrative deal. But at the end of the day, it was better for AEW. Hindsight being what it is, for Marty to stay where he was, because I always had this like conspiracy theory in the back of my mind that Marty going to ROH was this way to create a pipeline, an elite pipeline, back channel between the two companies, so that we could see like a lot of cross promotion stuff like we're getting now since Papa Khan just bought the company. But then things happen, bad things happen. Marty's name's not what it once was in the wrestling community. So I think that hurt Ring of Honor too. And that's very elite adjacent and AEW adjacent by default.
Well, when the last time we had a dedicated main event topic to Ring of Honor earlier this year, it was literally a show about the legacy of Ring of Honor and whether or not we even thought it would relaunch and or last. Right. So the last time Ring of Honor was top of mind for wrestling fans such as ourselves, it was questioning whether or not this promotion that had meant so much to professional wrestling had a future at all. And the fact that it now does is not only good news for Ring of Honor, it's good news for wrestling and the wrestling landscape and the men and women who need to have places to work as yet another place to work. And it's a clean slate in some ways, so that fantasy bookers such as Doug and I can talk a little bit about like, well, what might this Ring of Honor look
Right.
like. And it's
Right.
been tantalizing because we had just bits and pieces of what Tony has said in interviews, and then one relaunch show, Super Card of Honor, which took place on April 1st, that maybe gave some clues as to where Tony's head was, even though he called it a transition show with some things that were already booked before he got involved and purchased the promotion. So what we have are just some crumbs and clues, but that's what we're going to talk about tonight is what exactly could this Ring of Honor look like and what might it mean? And Doug, I know I really want to delve into like roster build, but before we do that, I have to say unequivocally, non-negotiable, first thing you have to do is hire Ian Riccaboni. It worked for Super Card of Honor. The man is excellent on commentary. I know Tony has a bench full of announcers that was like way ridiculously too deep, honestly, for the amount of programming he has. So you could look at the bottom line and say we could shift some announcers because we already have too many. No, Ian Riccaboni is the sound of Ring of Honor. As well as Caprice Coleman and Bobby Cruz, who they also brought in for Super Card of Honor. So just let's go ahead and give that presentation the look and sound and feel. Hire Ian Riccaboni.
Yep. No disagreement with me. Absolutely.
And he is interested. Ian is interested. He said he hasn't talked to Tony. He said they had they spoke obviously the night of the pay-per-view,
right.
But it wasn't really the time. But he said, squeaky wheel gets the grease. So he's putting it out there. And then in the interview that Ian gives, saying that, we ended on great terms. I don't know what's happening with me because Ian is literally the last contracted person with Sinclair that's still employed. And so he doesn't know Sinclair is going to buy him out. And then what happens after that. But I think that he's been very clear that he would be interested in continuing as the voice of Ring of Honor. And I think it'd be a wise move on Tony's part. And I don't see any reason why he wouldn't make that move.
I don't see either. Cause I think, he wants to transition Ring of Honor into, first of all, it's got to be profitable. I mean, first and foremost, just like Vince McMahon, Tony is a businessman. My God, he's running 2 football clubs, one soccer, one American football club, now 2 wrestling promotions.
Yeah.
I mean, I have time making it on time to this show and getting my kid to bed.
The dude's a billionaire for a reason. He's not just taking money out of one pocket to throw out into the wind. It's got to be profitable. And Ring of Honor towards the end was not profitable, I doubt, for Sinclair. Honestly, they were such a small piece of what Sinclair is that I don't think that they mattered to Sinclair.
As a former Sinclair employee from way back. Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, I mean, it was a nice little novelty act to put in the portfolio. But once it starts losing money or starts to become a financial burden, which a lot of choices, great choices on part of management that were not financially probably the best, but to pay their talent through the pandemic, to pay them for shows that they didn't have, but to keep these men and women a steady stream of income coming in. That's solid, man. That is solid.
Yeah, very much was. And I think that they, believed that they had a solid game plan moving forward. But, Ring of Honor was always rated for talent, whether it was WWE doing it. I mean, people, it's where you went and you made a name for yourself and the hardcore wrestling fans watched. And then you took that currency and cashed your check elsewhere. And so the idea that all the big names had left them, I think, is maybe a little bit of hindsight backseat driving by a lot of critics, because that's always been the case with Ring of Honor, and they always managed to build new stars. I really do think the fact that they couldn't tour and that they were purchased by a company that was making mass layoffs in general, that it just became untenable for them to move forward with Sinclair and the talent they had when they couldn't monetize it in any real significant way. But Doug, Tony has really talked a lot about the history of Ring of Honor, and it does help that unlike a Turner Broadcasting or something like back in the day with WCW and things, is that like you don't have a bunch of suits. You still have a billionaire, but you have a passionate wrestling fan who, if he says the Ring of Honor meant something to him and he wants to maintain that legacy, I think you have to believe him.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of his current roster that he's picked up from WWE are Ring of Honor. I mean, Ring of Honor greats. I mean, just go down. You're at the American Dragon. You've got CM Punk. You got Samoa Joe. You've got Red Dragon. You got the Bucks. You got Adam Cole. I mean,
So let me start here then with you, and that is a great pivot to my next talking point where I wanted to talk roster, because last week we talked about folks that just didn't have space in Tony Khan land in our mind. However, to your point, there is so much talent on his roster that has a history in Ring of Honor. Now, you're not going to move Daniel Bryan or Adam Cole or anything like that, but I think that for my first move here in reimagining ROH for us to talk about, I think it makes a lot of sense if you're wanting to have Ring of Honor look and feel like Ring of Honor and make it a distinct separate brand, is that you easiest move to do first is shift talent with Ring of Honor histories that are under contract with you already. That's not additional money to you, but are underutilized in AEW. Shift them over. I'm talking short list here. Jay Lethal, Frankie Kazarian, Willow, Josh the Goods Woods, the Seidel brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, again, Daniel Bryan is way too important to current AEW storylines, but there's plenty of other talent associated with Ring of Honor who are already under contract with Tony Khan. Again, it's a no-brainer, and like, you don't have to let these folks go or just have them wrestling occasionally on YouTube. You can shift them to the Ring of Honor brand.
Absolutely. And are we going to see, I mean, maybe I'm jumping the gun here in this conversation, but are we going to see more talent like Joe, who Tony has said Joe is both AEW and he's ROH. I mean, he is now, the current TV champion. So he has his ROH title. Are we going to see more like that, like FTR, the ROH? Of course, aren't they also the AAA tag team champions? So, but are we going to see FTR? Are they All Elite and are they Ring of Honor?
So I think for the time being, like, you have contracts that are AEW contracts, but until they actually have like TV and things like that, like you're just signing for AEW and then, you're working for Tony wherever he tells you to. So I wonder if some of these are also transitional, like, and I don't know, what do you think about that? Would you rather see talent move back and forth with regularity, or would you rather them be more like a WWE NXT relationship where you have the occasional, like, I'm going to go work 3 or 4 weeks of programming, but for the most part, keep the shows separate and distinct?
I think there's something to be said about keeping the show separate and distinct, but I think it's very wise to keep all of your ROH champions on AEW TV until you get your own TV for ROH. Absolutely,
100%. Keep the name out there for one.
And
because sometimes they'll start throwing out there. I noticed on AEW commentary, we're talking to Adam Cole. He's a whatever, how many days he held the ROH world title. I'm like, they're throwing ROH history lessons out in front of the AEW audience, because ultimately you're wanting to turn all the little Dynamite Dougs out there into, ROH Randys or whatever, You have a built-in audience. You start
really, because you got Wheeler Yuta, the pure champion right now.
Yeah.
Running around with Brian and Mox and my God, William Regal. Every title is elevated right now with ROH in AEW.
So when we talk about shifting talent over, once you have a distinct roster, once there is a show, or which we presume is the goal, Tony has stated that's the goal. Do you think that just for these, think about like an AEW when it started, a bunch of new faces that people didn't know, indie talent and things that were just, you had to be real hardcore, or a fan of a regional promotion that person was in. But then you spiced it up with like a Jericho or something like that. Is there, other than your Joshua Good Woods, who's great, but again, doesn't have big name brand recognition. I think a Jay Lethal would be a great big star in the pond of Ring of Honor. But do you think that you also take maybe and just for the sake of argument here, like shift a Young Bucks for a little while? I mean, they have a rich Ring of Honor history and have been Ring of Honor world champions and things like that. Maybe once you're done with a feud and you're not really doing a whole heck of a lot on AEW, that you go to Ring of Honor for a little bit and give some star power to that show. So maybe that the AEW fan who really didn't know they were interested in Ring of Honor might tune into the broadcast.
I think that's absolutely what should be done, because that talent exchange, or whatever we're going to call it, should be happening, especially with but yeah, I really wonder by the time they get TV, a lot more people are going to know who Jonathan Gresham is.
Yeah.
Everybody who claims to be a wrestling fan knows who Samoa Joe is. We're learning who Wheeler Yuta is. Do we have an ROH women's champion, or is that still Purrazzo?
It's still Purrazzo.
Okay, and she's actually Impact, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So here's where things did get confusing, but I give Ring of Honor a lot of credit in that the men and women who held the Ring of Honor championships upon the promotions going on hiatus, they defended those titles throughout the wrestling world. Jonathan Gresham especially literally went multiple continents, keeping the Ring of Honor brand of wrestling and name alive. And I'm sure they obviously Briscoes and Gresham, they gave it to people they trusted. Roxy was the women's champion, and I just actually saw her debut on NXT Level Up, and it's Raquel something another. No, maybe it was Rocky, or I don't remember. But anyway, they give her a whole new name. But they probably knew that, okay, we got a 19-year-old here and who has her eyes set on WWE. We can't let her walk out the door with the championship. So you give it to someone like a Deonna Purrazzo who might have some sort of
who's not going back to WWE.
Who is not going back to, who you can trust with that to hold that title until things settle. And it really was a great forethought on the folks, knowing that we don't know what the future holds, but we know the Briscoes will not do anything to desecrate the name of Ring of Honor. So let's let them.
The Briscoe boys are ride or die for ROH. So yeah,
and I think Deonna Purrazzo has proven herself to be a professional too. So I don't know if I think that they're having a women's number one contenders thing for the Ring of Honor championship, and I'm wanting to say it was not Willow, but who did Willow take on at the Supercard of Honor pay-per-view? Used to be in WWE and NXT. Menendez. But I think she is the number one contender for the Deonna Purrazzo's belt. So next time you see an ROH women's match, Martinez.
Oh, yeah, Mercedes. Yeah.
Yep. She is the number one contender now for the ROH women's championships. They sort of have their champions not only decided and settled, they even have some feuds set up for most of them, even without ongoing television, which has been really smart. And to your point again, by weaving some of those storylines into Ring of Honor, you're starting to nurture the AEW audience on Ring of Honor feuds and history and current storylines and champions and number one contenders, which is great. Doug, for me, I really think, though, that if I'm reimagining Ring of Honor like Tony Khan is getting ready to do, I think that I would go for the NXT 1.0 model and not the 2.0 model. Nothing against the 2.0 model, because it's actually been more successful than I would have expected it to be. But by that, I mean, I think it would be good for Tony to not just use it as developmental, which he's mentioned, but to also bring in a Samoa Joe or some older talent or veterans, the way that Triple H used to do with NXT, because Vince's NXT is a whole lot different kind of developmental than what Tony's talking about, truly its own separate brand. And I think with that, you need your veterans in there, your Jay Lethals and stuff that bring name value to get people to watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of like old marks like us that are totally geeking out because one of us just happens to be a billionaire. Now, not only does he have AEW, but he has ROH too,
I think
and
that's the
that
most
vast
important.
library as well.
The vast library, which will play in big once AEW does have their own streaming service, because so much of his talent that's been AEW is got a lot of their early work that he now would own the rights to, which is something that Vince pretty much has owned the history of professional wrestling by gobbling up those tape libraries. The Ring of Honor library is probably the most valuable library out there for current day talent if you want their entire backstories.
This is absolutely true because you're going to get those Ric Flair, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, in those old territory tapes that Vince owns, but those Daniel Bryan, those CM or Bryan Danielson, CM Punks, Red Dragon, Bobby Fish, all these folks.
Yeah,
Ethan Page,
I mean, literally, half the roster, it seems. So I know we said, like, let's move folks, because there's a lot of room to move folks to Ring of Honor that would give the continuity of Ring of Honor. And you can do that without costing yourself any more money than you're already spending. Mm-hmm. I'd like to shift the conversation now, though, to hiring select talent with Ring of Honor histories that will make it still, like, solidify that this is Ring of Honor, and we're honoring the legacy of Ring of Honor, and we're giving you the Ring of Honor that people loved from the early 2000s and things when it was really, really good. I think that you don't have to go out and make a ton of acquisitions, but I think there are enough folks out there that are Ring of Honor associated that makes sense for Tony to bring into the fold. And we've mentioned one of them multiple times tonight, but you have to give a contract to the Briscoes, don't you?
Oh, to me, I'm just assuming the Briscoes are absolutely part of whatever the new incarnation of ROH is. I mean, I think that to me anyway, as a wrestling fan, that is a given. I mean, that the Briscoe brothers, have at least one more run in them with ROH tag team titles, and they're going to have to take them off of FTR at some point in the future to reclaim that ROH history.
Please give us that match again, right? All day long.
Exactly.
I had heard that maybe there was some rumblings. I don't know how true it is, but that's because of some of the controversies of the Briscoes in the past, that Warner Brothers, the big corporation that is the Turner TBS empire, maybe had some reservations about the Briscoes, but that was so far in the past, and everyone's allowed to try to make amends for things. Sure. And they did and said all the right things, and they've been good, solid citizens for many years now. Mm-hmm. Down the road. I don't think that at this point that should be held against them, especially with their history with Ring of Honor and just their talent that they bring to the ring. That's a no-brainer. You have to hire the Briscoes to be part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my mind, that's already a done deal. That's one of those. Why are we even talking about this? Let's move on to some fiction, because that's in my mind is happening.
Let's hope that's happening. I hope that is true. We saw that Supercard of Honor was kind of the start of, like, hey, here's Samoa Joe. We have him signed to AEW, but we're bringing him in and premiering him on ROH pay-per-view, and then we're having him win an ROH title. So it seems like Tony's leaning towards, like, we're going to build around a legacy, like legend, ROH legend, like Joe. There's still some relevant names out there, though, Doug, for the taking, that have Ring of Honor ties that are currently unsigned or signed elsewhere. So I think that, again, you can cherry pick who you think would make a difference, but I'd say you pick up an OGK. Rumor has it that Jonathan Grisham has signed a contract that would make all the sense in the world. Mm-hmm. And like with Joe, it's technically an AEW contract from my understanding, but that's, here nor there right now, I guess. But Bandito, I think, is another.
Oh, yeah.
Roosh, Kenny King.
So did Roosh have some medical issues that took him out of the wrestling world for a while? And
I'm not sure. I thought it was visa issues.
So maybe my information's dated, but because again, I haven't exactly kept up on the product. But yeah, Roosh. Because I was thinking sometime after ROH went not under, but went on hiatus, there was some issues with Roosh, and I wasn't sure if he was returning to wrestling. I certainly hope so. I may be misinformed about all this. If anybody knows what Roosh's actual status is, leave us a comment. Message us. Let us know.
If he is still available and out there, I think that he needs to be brought in. Jeff Cobb, I know he's with New Japan, but he has ties to Ring of Honor. He had a good run in Ring of Honor. He's wrestled for Tony Khan just as a one-off on AEW. My God, bring in Jeff Cobb. But by all means, of the names out there that are currently not signed to a Tony Khan contract that needs to be brought in, and you saw why, if anyone saw Battle of the Belts last night, freaking Dalton Castle. I mean, you talk about a unique character.
You know what, man? My first experience with Dalton Castle was when I watched All In, and I was like, "What? What am I? I don't know what I'm watching, but I am terribly entertained by this character and his entourage."
The boys, the chickens, the man who lives life deliciously. I mean, just there's everything about Dalton Castle.
Absolutely.
The in-ring work is great, but the character is next level, charismatic to the nines. Give him a contract. Obviously, they must have a decent enough handshake relationship to bring him on an AEW show. I hope that leads to an actual contract.
Mm-hmm. So you think, like in the case of Dalton Castle, another ROH talent that I'm certain we're going to see popping up on AEW television over the next few weeks. You think these are kind of like their tryouts for not necessarily the big leagues, but their return to where they came from?
I mean, it is, that's a good point. And maybe it's to a tryout and seeing how an audience, maybe a non-ROH audience reacts to them. Because last night on Battle of the Belts, you're seeing a AEW audience chanting Dalton Castle's name. Like right there, that's the instant like Tony should have had the contract waiting as soon as the man hit the curtain, because the fans who maybe weren't as familiar with Dalton Castle or are hardcore fans and of course know Dalton Castle. Either way, that was the word to Tony that, we want this guy.
And so here's the thing too, isn't necessarily, a nod to Tony to set off Tony's spider senses or whatever, but more so because, of TV deals being what they are and some very questionable AEW booking that happened this week due to TV deals, which I'll talk about later. Is it more so that there's a sizzle reel for, television later on? Say, look, this person brings this kind of pop. This person, we're not even going to mention this person because, well, they just didn't test well, So,
Tony has been really upfront in interviews that he has been in discussion with his bosses over at Warner Brothers about the possibility of Ring of Honor and that they're interested. And that's all he said. I don't know what that level of interest is, but you could be 100% correct. In these conversations, he has admitted to having with Network Brass. It could be like, hey, look at this, rating point here when Dalton Castle was on TV, or hear that pop there, like to sell them on the idea that a separate Ring of Honor roster would still do well without the AEW brand or AEW stars. 100%.
Or even if it's not, Warner Brothers, one of the many other services out there at this point. Maybe we can get a ROH on Peacock. God, I hope not.
That one probably won't happen because of the what was it? Who was it? MLW was trying to get on Tubi, and Vince killed that deal because of his relationship there. So yeah, probably in the non-Vince world, you might see another contract, and I hope so. I think that'll be important. Doug, I'd like to shift now to not just Ring of Honor alumni or either on Tony's payroll or still out there in the broader wrestling world. But I saved some names last week from cutting in our hypothetical layoffs, because I think that there's also, you need a full roster. You don't want to spend a ton of money already if you're Tony and have so much talent that you don't already know what to do with. So yes, you cherry pick off the indie scene, Ring of Honor names. You move your own Ring of Honor names over. But I think that there's talent that you can shift that has no Ring of Honor history, but either don't have room currently on AEW to really blossom or grow without having enough TV time. And it would make sense, since he's wanting to use it as a developmental type system, that some of these names would do better in a Ring of Honor environment than the current environment they're in. So I'm talking, the Varsity Blondes, I think, would be a great move. Sky Blue, I think, would be an excellent addition to the women's division. I think that Ethan Page, he doesn't get enough ring time at all. Swerve Strickland doesn't get enough ring time. Ricky Starks is more on commentary than he is in the ring. Tony Nese, I mean, what's Tony Nese really doing over in AEW right now?
Yeah, what is Tony Nese really doing?
Bear Country, Aaron Solo, Lee Johnson. I'd like to see Brock Anderson develop in a Ring of Honor where it's all about, like, pure wrestling, and he won't have to worry so much about the fact that he's not that great on the stick just yet. He could just go in there and try to be the next version of his dad until he gets it down,
man, I still say that, there's money left on the table when and I pointed this out last week. Pillman and Anderson, Brian Pillman and Jr., Brock, put them together. There is a legacy team right there. I mean, Griff Garrison, I have no problem with Griff Garrison, but I think you put Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson together and let just let second generation magic happen.
I think that there's still a gulf there between Brian and Brock, so I think that we need to bring Brock up a little bit before we make that happen, because I think Brian's ready to go, and that's why it's like
ready to go. We bring in Hook. Oh my God! I've created a real legacy stable here. I gotta text Tony. Hold on.
Doug, is there any talent on AEW's roster that you didn't cut last week that you think, even though they have no Ring of Honor pedigree, that would make a lot of sense over there?
You know what? I'm not sure what we're going to do with the Machine Brian Cage, but I think Brian Cage would be great in ROH. I think that would be a great place for Brian Cage to land.
And it seems like that's the hint that, with his Super Card of Honor appearance, maybe Tony's in agreement with you.
And I think not necessarily now, but at some point within the next year or two, when we break up Jurassic Express and strap a rocket to Jungle Boy Jack Perry, who will eventually just be Jack Perry, and let him, be one of those pillars of AEW. We give Luchasaurus the makeover. I mean, the gimmick's good now, but it's a gimmick, and I think this dude, I don't know his real name, but I think he's a great wrestler. I mean, he's big, he's athletic. He could rebrand himself, or maybe even just take the Luchasaurus gimmick. Now that I'm thinking about it and saying it out loud, I don't have a big problem with it. But if we were to rebrand him as to something else, stick him over there, and don't do the Vince McMahon thing, but we acknowledge him. He's taken the mask off. He was formerly Luchasaurus. Bad breakup with Jurassic Express. He's going over here to make a name for his own. And then eventually you have some history there at one of those Supercard shows, which will, of course, happen because Tony owns both brands. So, there's interpromotional things that could work there, but that's just some armchair fantasy booking to move Luchasaurus.
And Luchasaurus actually does have a background in. The first time I ever saw Luchasaurus was in Ring of Honor.
There you go.
I remember, I didn't know who he was. He came to the ring. I'm like, what in the world is this? I took a picture, I think, and sent it to you, and you showed it to your son, who instantly became his favorite wrestler.
This is true. Luchasaurus is his favorite wrestler, right behind Kenny Omega.
Right behind. Good taste, that kid.
Yeah.
Doug, I'm thinking of folks like Red Velvet. Would be a great addition to a women's division that is maybe too crowded for her in AEW, but would be perfect for her. Kiera Hogan. We're talking about a lady who was great at Impact, has come over to AEW, and she was a champion in Impact. Move her to Ring of Honor, where there's more room and you'll need to build out a women's division. Private Party. I mean, as talented as they are, to lose as much as they do, I didn't cut them last week because I like them, but they don't do enough with them. But I thought they would be Ring of Honor perfect. John
Well,
Silver would be Ring
I
of Honor.
totally eviscerated like the whole Andrade family office or whatever it was last week because I mean Andrade is too big of a talent to be wasted the way he is. And I agree with Private Party too, and I think only kept Butcher and Blade out of them and pushed them over into my own fantasy House of Black incarnation I'm creating. But yeah, I think Andrade would be a great one in Ring of Honor too.
Yeah. I think of John Silver. I know I did the same thing you did to the Andrade family office. I did the same thing to Dark Order, but I think that John Silver, because of the undersized nature of like your Jonathan Grishams and things, where size didn't really matter in Ring of Honor, I think he would be, with his personality, he could be a big star in a smaller pond, and I think Ring of Honor will be a great opportunity for him. Hybrid 2. I didn't cut them last week because they're so supremely talented, but they lose. I mean, they're jobbers on AEW, and you could rebuild them into a legit, I mean, them and Private Party having a feud in Ring of Honor, throw them into a tag team title scene with FTR and the Briscoes, and if you do move the Bucks over, I mean, you'd instantly have a great mix of legacy ROH talent with histories in ROH and young talent on AEW's roster right now that are totally not getting utilized at all. I'd even say Butcher and Blade would be Ring of Honor. Camaretto, he was another one. I know last week you mentioned him. I didn't have him on my cut list because even though they don't do enough with him, I think what you saw in him as well is like there's more here than what we can see.
Yeah, because I was getting rid of the whole factory with, I mean, you mentioned Aaron Solo earlier, but I cut the entire factory other than Colorado. But I'm not even sure I've seen Solo wrestle. I think I know Solo as more as Mr. Bailey for forever until that, broke apart. So,
yeah, there's definitely a lot of availability right now in the AEW headspace to move talent in a place that you would utilize them. And I hope that that's what Tony does, building around select pieces that he brings. Outside of roster development, Doug, is there other things that you think of when reimagining Ring of Honor to keep things distinct from what Tony Khan has going on? You don't want Ring of Honor to become the Thursday Night Thunder to your Monday Night Retro. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely not. I think you keep the ROH as it is, with the handshakes, the history, the pure, you keep all of that because that's what makes ROH ROH.
Keep the rules, 20 counts on the outside of the ring.
Yeah.
That's different than AEW. Make sure the fans know that, okay, on over here, it's a 20 count. And definitely pure rules and pure title matches. And they're starting to, get that in front of the AEW audience to get them used to what a pure rules match is. And I think that's very smart.
Absolutely. I think Tony's making a lot of the right moves here with ROH.
Well, the obvious thing, and maybe this is a good spot to end as far as reimagining, all of this is really contingent on maybe that announcement might be as soon as Wednesday, but it is distribution. It's the reason why the Eric Bischoff group that tried to buy WCW to save it there at the end did not succeed when they realized that it didn't come with television because Turner was no longer interested in having it on. Suddenly all you're buying is the library and a few contracts, and you have no place to showcase it. So I know Tony is in a better position, and it's a different landscape now that you could, conceivably run something on just YouTube or something like that. But that isn't ideal. I think that really the immediate and success of getting this thing launched would be a distribution deal, don't you think? You're not even necessarily talking it has to be on TBS. Nowadays, you could launch on a streamer. You could launch on Netflix or Hulu or something like that and still do well. But I think you have to have something other than your own YouTube channel to prop this up.
Yeah, you say that. I'm not sure how much because is it Stars with the Amell? Stephen Amell has Stars with the Heel show, because that has a lot of when I say a lot, CM Punk's in it, but there's a lot of wrestling talent in that, whether they're behind the scenes or whatever. And I know Stephen Amell is a huge wrestling fan. I think he's also pretty tight with Cody, because Cody was on Arrow back in the day. And I think they formed a relationship. Clearly, the man's a
You got to
wrestler.
mail into the ring.
Yeah. Clearly, the man is a wrestling fan. I'm not sure what kind of stroke he has at Stars, but maybe some sort of like off cable, but or not off cable, but cable, not like a big network kind of thing like that could really go too.
I would love to see something like that. I know it's not impossible. I don't mean to disparage just YouTube only deals. NWA, MLW, they're primarily doing like, either on Fight or on YouTube, and they're doing okay. But for a Tony Khan level promotion, I think you definitely need a larger platform and clearance. And I mean, yes, you could run it on ROH's YouTube channel, or I guess you could give like Dark Elevation over to Ring of Honor Elevation, and Dark stay AEW, but I still think that's less than ideal. You could even give the Friday night show over to Ring of Honor, but I hate to see, ROH Rampage, because I think AEW still needs more than the 2 hours they currently have. I think that third hour is somewhat helpful, but I think a whole new show on cable or streaming or pay cable even, I think is necessary for any of the things we've talked about previously to really make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Although I do like the sound of ROH Rampage, though. That does kind of work.
I mean, ROH seems like the perfect fit for a Friday night. As far as audience goes, that's mainly been on Sinclair syndication, usually running in the nighttime on weekends, places, and as an underground developmental, see the stars here first kind of show. I think a Friday night or late night Saturday show kind of has a hip feel to it. Maybe that is a direction you go in it. It's not like Rampage has a very long history as an AEW program. You could always do that.
As long as we don't go to a ROH underground.
Let's not do that.
Let's not
do Shotgun ROH. Let's not go there. But it really is, the sky's the limit, and it is a blank slate. We've got a taste of where Tony's head is at with some of the decisions he's made. Some of the notes that Doug and I have put together to talk about reimagining ROH, I've had mine for long enough now that some of what I had and the people I said you need to get, Tony's already started to do. So I think that I feel confident in the direction that he's going, and I really believe that the announcement he has on Wednesday night would not surprise me a bit if it is Ring of Honor related, and maybe we'll answer some of the questions we brought up tonight, and maybe even follow up on some of the things we've suggested tonight, Doug.
Yep.
I'm excited. I know as a Tony Khan devotee, you have to be excited, and an old school Ring of Honor fan too. I think all the wrestling fans should be excited about the future as opposed to the direction that it was headed in.
Absolutely. Oh, the big finish.
And with that, Doug, if there's nothing else you have left about reimagining ROH, let's talk a little bit about the week that was and our 1, 2, 3. And I will let you. I could tell from the opener that you have some things you want to get off your chest. So I don't know where you want to start. Maybe you do want to start it.
So here we go. This is my old man rambling for the week. I'm just going to smush this all into one. I tend to do this sometimes, but I'm just going to smush this all into one. Match, performer, and botch. Here we go. They're all related.
Okay.
So let me start with performer, right? Samoa Joe, one of my favorite wrestlers, right up there with CM Punk. Never thought I was going to see Punk in a wrestling ring again. If you go on Twitter and look me up, or not Twitter, it's TikTok. That's what it is, where I posted a TikTok video of me totally marking out when Punk returns. I love that. Yeah. That energy that I get when Punk comes back, and I know that was just me. I think a lot of wrestling fans thought Joe was done too, even when he had those like slight little comeback. I think we were all thinking, well, Joe's done. Joe's not done. Joe is still here. Tony Khan is showing us what a beast Joe can be. Joe's now our ROH champion. He meets by defeating old murder grandpa there, Minoru Suzuki. Suzuki, who I think is quickly becoming a not credible threat to any ROH audience not ROH, gosh, we've been talking about that all night, to any AEW audience who's not really seen his work outside of AEW, because every time he's on AEW television, he ends up losing. This time he drops the title belt to Samoa Joe, which is great. It's amazing. That match, just where the chops back and forth, match of the week right there for me because, again, old school Mark, love Suzuki and just that crazy old man, just feel no pain. I'm here to hurt everybody around me and win mentality that character puts over, and Joe standing toe to toe with it. So there we have, my performer, Joe, match Suzuki Joe. Botch, what happened at the end of that match when it just should have cut off there. Joe celebrating in the ring, ROH TV champion. This is like a return of a king, right? He has come back to the mountain. He has returned to ROH. And then we get our
debut.
Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt, who I love. Being an old school Impact fan, I love seeing Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt together. I think that's great. Lights go down, lights come up. There's this ridiculously tall, I sound like Trump. I hear people telling me that he is a basketball player, some sort of sports ball player of some kind. Freakishly tall man who, again, Sanjay Dutt has a lot of good things to say about him. They say this dude is very kind, is very interested, takes criticism well, is working hard to be an actual professional wrestler and do something besides the big man stuff. But they debut him doing ridiculous big man stuff. It was suddenly like I was watching some Vince McMahon promo. I was like, what is happening? Has my TV been hijacked? What am I watching? This is garbage. This is hot garbage. This is hot salted garbage. It's like McDonald's food bad. But
did you see him on Battle of the Belts?
I did.
Yeah. So like they literally had him bouncing somebody's head like a basketball, and they brought that up. I'm like, please don't tell me that's going to be the gimmick because he used to be a basketball player.
I mean, I get that, AEW is going into the Indian markets. I get that this is good for that. Just like when Jinder Mahal became WWE champion from a business decision. I understand what they're trying to do. I just don't like it. And I just don't think I just don't like it.
Well,
that's my old man rant. I'll let you talk about it.
That's a very good old man rant. I on match of the week, I definitely am in agreement. I was torn, so I will talk about my other match. But I will say that the match that you mentioned, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, it's 2022. This is what wrestling is. You have the main event of AEW taken by a man whose legacy and history and legend was built in Impact and in Ring of Honor, taking on a New Japan and mixed martial arts legend for the ROH title. Like,
yes.
Like, who would have thought all of that was possible, except if it was in 2022, and it's a great time to be a wrestling fan.
Yes.
But my match of the week, though, my gosh, Hangman, Adam Cole, on Rampage on Friday night, just about did everything that there was to do, including I thought maybe killing Adam Cole on that Crown of Thorns driver from the apron through the table thing. I'm like, oh my Lord, guys, let's save a little something, But it was amazing. It was an amazing match. There was so much good wrestling this week, especially on the AEW side. Battle of the Belts was great. Dynamite was great, beginning to end. Just as easily could have picked the opening match of Dynamite as
yes.
I mean, honestly, that CM Punk match may have been better than the main event. It was just the idea of who was in there and what we were seeing. It was just a great week of wrestling on the AEW side, for sure. My botch of the week, though, sometimes, and this is my little bit of a rant. I keep notes. Like as I go along, Monday is like, oh, that could be the match of the week until I see something that tops it. Scratch out, and sometimes botch of the week is a fun little miss, and then sometimes it's something a little more serious. And it started out with this is the botch of the week because poor Bobby Lashley cannot get Omos's name right to save his life. His name is not Almost, It is Omos, not almost. And you think before WrestleMania when he did it a time or two, no, the man just cannot get it right. So I was
Maybe he's doing that Jericho thing where he intentionally gets the name wrong to get under the skin.
Yeah, it's not one of those. It's just he cannot pronounce it for anything. And it was kind of funny. And then comes Friday night and something that is not so funny. And I don't know what the repercussions are going to be. But poor Pat McAfee, when Butch kind of went crazy on his own teammates there, please, Pat, I'm sure you had this yelled into your ears, but do not refer to the man as a rabid Wolverine. Yeah, not good. And I'm sure he heard about it afterwards. That could not have been a line that was fed to him. That had to be unintentional or just a really bad decision on his part. Either way, I'm sure he paid for it. But that was my botch of the week. Performance of the week, Doug. Just when you think we can end on a lighter note, and as we're getting ready for that, I will go ahead and throw up for the folks at home some of the upcoming topics we have on the Two Bros Wrestling Show. But my performer of the week was a gimmick that I had never seen, and at times when you've been around the business and fans as long as you and I have, you think you've seen everything, but I saw the NWA. Kudos to William Patrick Corgan and the NWA for debuting a new type of wrestler. But the Sinister Minister, who I know you all will remember from Impact, he has a great stable called the Miserably Faithful. And the Miserably Faithful got a new member this week. And so my performer of the week is Gags the Gimp. Gags the Gimp was referred to, Joe Galley, who's a great commentator for NWA, referred to him as a submissive luchador. Dude's got a mask, like a lucha kind of mask. It has horns on it. It's got a zipper across the mouth. He's dressed totally as a gimp. He stands at the ringside very passively, waiting until his dominant tells him what to do. And then he goes nuts in the ring, pulling off the different moves that, it is insane. It is ridiculous in all of the good ways as far as, I did not see that coming. I've never seen a submissive luchador before, but Gags the Gimp, Doug, is my performer of the week.
I just tried Googling Gags the Gimp. I would advise nobody do what I just did.
Good thing you don't have the phone facing the camera, Doug, or we would be flagged.
Oh, man, I'm glad my little one went to bed earlier with his mom because, wow, nobody needs to see the things I just saw. Of course, you're into that. But, yeah, don't do that at work.
Don't be Googling Gags the Gimp, but watch Gags the Gimp on National Wrestling Alliance programming on NWA Power as well as NWA USA. And with that, Doug, I think we have hit a lot of topics tonight, and a lot of promotions, man. We got a lot of the small ones in NWA, MLW, of course, main event topic, talking Ring of Honor. Next week, Doug, we're going to look broadly across the wrestling world about who's hot and who's not. You're never just treading water in the world of professional wrestling and the bookers and promoters of professional wrestling. Your stock's either up or down, and it is obvious by the way you're portrayed on television and the way you're treated. So next week should be a fun one for folks to chime in on, because Doug and I are going to give you some hot takes on who is currently hot in the world of pro wrestling and why, and who is on the outs for reasons either known or unknown. And that is next week's topic, 8:00 here on Sunday, live Eastern time on Facebook, and then on replay on YouTube. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Don't Google Gags the Gimp. Don't do it.
I didn't mean to throw the opening bell up. I hit it instead of hitting the end broadcast. Let's try that.